All right, we are recording. Hi, this is William Ramsey. Welcome to William Ramsey Investigates. On today's show, I have a very special guest. He comes to us from Hawaii, the beautiful state of Hawaii. His name is Makia Freeman, Freeman, and he's published a book. And you'll see it if you're watching this live. Or not live, this is recorded. If you're watching this when I upload it to X, Rockfin, and Rumble, full title of the book is The International Satanic Network Exposed. Survivors reveal names of presidents, prime ministers, and royals. So this kind of like I had just done these interviews and read a book by Annika Lucas, who was a victim in the network of Dutro and this really creepy guy Nihul who's passed away. But she was on some of these shows. I think it was the David's Bet David show where she's like, I don't even want to mention these names. She mentioned like incredible names: Rockefeller and the head of Canada, the Prime Minister Trudeau, not Justin but his dad. So some of these guys are involved in dark stuff, and her stuff overlaps with like this stuff in this book. But I'm glad to have him on the show. So Makia, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
For people who haven't heard your name, maybe your other interviews, can you talk a little bit about your background and then what led you up to writing this book, International Satanic Network Exposed?
Sure, yeah, it's my fourth book. I've been researching the global conspiracy, the worldwide conspiracy, for about 18 years full time now. I launched the website, thefreedomarticles.com, in around 2012 or so, and I did a lot of articles there before I wrote books, and I moved into doing books and more videos now. But basically, I'm interested in really any aspect of the conspiracy. And so when I first started researching it, it was a lot more superficial, just maybe about big pharma or political corruption or things like that. That's like an easier way to get into it. But pretty soon I realized that all of this stuff, when you go deep enough, it's all connected. And reading books by David Icke was really the catalyst for me to become a researcher. I remember reading those books and my mind being blown open, and I realized, the world was just not at all what I thought it was, and I couldn't go back and unlearn what I just learned. And so it set me on this trail of wanting to really understand and know, like, who is actually running this world and what is it all about. And so it's led me into all sorts of deep dark corners. And there's something about the Satanism which I think is really important to understand, because when we see that there's these groups that are running the world, and then when we have all these survivors that have actually been part of this network, and they've somehow lived to tell the tale, and they're talking about what goes on behind closed doors with this group, I realized, this isn't just some twisted hobby that they have that they're doing on the side. This is actually fundamentally connected to the evil that they're propagating, because what they're doing in these black magic rituals is, it's like demonic possession. They're opening themselves up to some force, and they're getting overtaken by that force. And there's some amount of brilliance to this, that they're doing this deliberately, and then this evil force is then using these people, and using them as vessels to push this incredibly evil agenda out that people know as a new world order. And if we don't understand what's really promoting it, and the real forces behind it, we're not going to be able to really, I think, stop it. We have to get a grasp on the full situation so we can do something about it.
I agree. And a lot of people don't realize that they can't believe that these guys are literal practicing Luciferians or Satanists. They kind of have maybe a cartoon. Like these guys are very serious. They do rituals, and you have a section in your book of the places they go to. And I mean, and then these other people are like their testimonies are from all different parts of the globe, right? I mean, it's international.
Exactly. That's what's really interesting about studying this, because if we just had one testimony from one person and it was isolated, you might think this person is lying to achieve fame or glory, or maybe they're just deluded, or maybe someone's putting them up to it. Who knows? But when we get consistent, repeated testimonies from all these different people, a lot of them are women, with incredible detail. I mean, very explicit detail of what they went through as a child. A lot of them being inducted into this network. Um, the people that they name are the same people often in all these different testimonies, and the places and the rituals, everything they describe matches up with each other. Suddenly a whole new picture comes into being that these people are not crazy and that they have been through something horrific and that they are actually telling us the truth about what is going on behind the curtain, behind the scenes, with the most powerful people, the richest and most powerful people in the world.
It's really incredible. And you mentioned Eyes Wide Shut and these things. More you look at Kubrick stuff, like you're like, this is really real. And the thing in the background of Eyes Wide Shut of all the heraldry, so they're suggesting to you, they don't overtly say royalty, or maybe Ziegler is obviously one of these world controller types or something. Mason, that's what it means in German or something like that. But you see the heraldry and these kind of vaunted things of the guy up on the balcony and all the little people below. In Kubrick, I think it's all intentional. Like he really, it's such an incredible, auspicious date for him too. The 1999 release date of Eyes Wide Shut, and that was also in some of these castles, right? Some of these like important rich people
Yeah, he,
castles.
he, he actually managed to secure a Rothschild mansion in the United Kingdom to shoot the famous sexual orgy scene. And the Rothschilds are the key family behind all of this. I mean, yeah, we can look at other families like the Rockefellers and the Morgans, and yes, those families have also been instrumental in the oppression of humanity. But it all really comes back to the Rothschilds because they were the ones that launched their whole private banking empire in the mid 1700s. And by the time it got to 1800, they'd basically conquered Europe. They were in charge and they were telling kings what to do. They were pushing countries around. And they had linked up with another cult called the Sabbatean Frankist cult. Jacob Frank and Rothschilds had made basically formed an unholy alliance, if you like, in Frankfurt. And that appears to be, as far as what I can tell in my research, where this whole satanic aspect started. But the Rothschilds were funding it, they were into it, and then they had the money and power to basically push it worldwide. Um, but yeah, it's very important that Kubrick was brilliant, and there's no doubt about it. I mean, everything, as you said, in his films is intentional. He's leaving all these clues, and he didn't just do it in Eyes Wide Shut. Um, Jay Widener put out the theory years ago now that Kubrick was trying to tell people, trying to communicate that he had been the one that shot the fake moon landing by dropping clues in his other films, such as The Shining. But he didn't want to come out and say it because he'd done a deal with the devil. Basically, he was allowed to get unlimited funding for his films and artistic license and whatever, as long as he didn't spill the beans on what really happened with the moon landing. And so he had to just drop hints and do it obliquely. And um, he had to have plausible deniability, if you like, as they say in the military intelligence world. So, he dropped clues in The Shining about what happened, but all the clues he drops in Eyes Wide Shut are absolutely incredible. As you say, like one of the main characters is Ziegler, meaning Mason. So he's dropping clues about the royal families, the Masons, the rich people, and he even gives hints down to little things like when Tom Cruise actually puts the mask on and enters the ritual, and there's like the man who's leading the ritual with like the stick, and he bangs a stick on the floor 3 times, a number of times in that scene. Then when Tom Cruise is back in real life in the real world in the daytime, and he doesn't have his mask on, Ziegler is doing a similar thing to the billiard table,
Wow,
banging it 3 times, right?
wow,
Just
I
little
didn't know
things
that.
like that. So Kubrick
And
suggesting,
the red carpet is there
yeah,
too. Like who's seen a
yeah,
pearl pool table with reds? Typically green, right? The red felt or green felt.
Exactly. So there's this suggestion that Ziegler was actually the leader of that ceremony. But even if that might be reading too much into it. But the point is, yeah, like Kubrick's trying to do everything he can to say, this is what's happening. These are the people that are running it, without coming out and saying it himself. Of course, he still basically was suicided. Got a mysterious heart attack 4 days before the release of the film, as it was.
He was a very cagey guy. Like something happened to him where he left the country, the U.S., and ended up in London as kind of a semi recluse. He was still working, but very kind of like not going out. People came to him. Like he seemed like he was afraid of something. And some of his
Yeah.
friends were very like Arthur C. Clarke, who he worked on 2001 together, is another. That's a whole nother show. I've done a show on him. He's a really dark character, a lot of Masonic understanding. So Kubrick knew all this stuff. That's what people don't get is like he's getting all this stuff in the 60s, right? So like he's absorbing it over decades. So that
Yes.
Eyes Wide Shut isn't something that just kind of came out of nowhere. He kind of
Yes, he must
understood.
have been. He must have been invited into this network at some point, and we don't know how deep he went. But There's another whistleblower that I have in my book, Ronald Bernard, a Dutch whistleblower, and he's a very interesting case because he does explicitly say that he was working in the world of finance, and he moved up the rungs of the ladder. He gained the trust of the people above him. He was acting as an absolute predator, and then he started to get invited to these satanic rituals, first as a spectator, but then as a participant. And so, like, as he earned their trust, he went deeper and deeper into it until, in his case, when he saw children being sacrificed, it was like something, he had like a psychic split and a breakdown and a meltdown, and he somehow extricated himself alive out of that network. But yeah, maybe the same thing happened to Kubrick. Maybe he did get invited to these things, and then basically it's kind of the thing of like, once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. And anyone who's ever been invited, maybe that this cult network keeps tabs on them to make sure they don't talk and go public about it.
Right. It's interesting. You keep saying that word network because when I read Annika Lucas's book, maybe within the last month or two, that's how she refers to what she was brought into. Capital N network. So there was something under this undercurrent of normal civilization. There was this undercurrent of places and people that operated under the table or sub rosa, and it was just so creepy. And it was like the Satanism was endemic to Belgian society. Like, so people who aren't in the occult, they just never see this stuff. But there was just this current of pedophilia, trafficking, drugs, murder, sacrifice. She thought she was going to be sacrificed. This is a hard to believe. At a 1972 Bilderberg meeting. So she thought that she legitimately thought she was on the agenda to like do that. And when we can go into the Bilderbergs, this is part of that whole international satanic or whatever, like occult. There's an occult underpinning with all these things. The Cirque, Knights of Malta had some occultists in it. The Bilderbergers. I mean, all these things, and it's just incredible that that's really the truth of all this stuff. Is these guys really were into, and mentions David Rockefeller, who's right there in Manhattan for 9/11. Like, you should listen if you get a chance to read his testimony of 9/11. He's just in the right vantage point to watch the events take place. Like, it's the uncanny that he would actually have been there, for this event. But
Yeah, well, I mean, the when you look at all the major events of world history, whether it's World War One, World War Two, the rise of the Nazis, the JFK assassination, 9/11 operation, the Russian Revolution, the French Revolution, all of it can be traced back to this cult. And I mean, I'm not exaggerating. It's basically they are masters of putting on different disguises and creating front groups, and creating patsies. But at the end of the day, when you lead it all back, it's really not that many people. It is one very tight, interwoven network. The Rothschilds are at the center of it. Rockefeller's a part of it. They're into Satanism, pedophilia, and they are lusting after world domination. They're trying to set up a global government where there's just two classes of people, rulers and slaves. And that's
neo feudalism, really. Just
yeah.
like Crowley said, like, he thought that the optimal system for humanity was feudalism. Like, that's crazy to think somebody would think that, who died in 1947 after going through the all these different revolutions and things like that. But the Frankists, maybe people don't know what the Frankists believe. Are you familiar with their philosophy was?
Sure, I can share a bit of that. So it really started with Sabbatai Zevi. So basically, what happened was there was a guy called Sabbatai Zevi who lived in the Middle East from Turkey, but he also lived in actually Gaza and Palestine. And then in 1666, of all years, he declared himself the Jewish Messiah, and he had a massive following. It's written that he had around 1 million followers, which was half of the world Jewry at that time. So it's an incredible amount of people were following him. Then he declared himself the Messiah. A lot of people still believe that. I mean, that turned off a lot of people, and a lot of people started thinking he was a charlatan, like a huckster. But what happened was that he, at that time there was the Ottoman Empire ruling that area, and so the Sultan said to him, either you convert to Islam or you die, basically. So he converted to Islam, and then secretly still practiced Judaism underneath that. And this is what gave birth to the term dönme, which is a Turkish word meaning to turn. And so it's basically the dönme were like the crypto Jews, the hidden Jews. They remained Jewish underneath, but they adopted whatever it was, Christianity or Islam or whatever it was on the outside. And Sabbatai Zevi was into things like sexual orgies and ritual. I don't exactly know to what extent he pushed it, but the guy that came after him was a complete psychopath, and that was Jacob Frank. So when Zevi died, Frank took over, and Frank basically said that he was a reincarnation of Zevi, and he also declared himself the Messiah. And another important part of this story is that what these guys were saying was that during the times of the Messiah, during messianic times, everything was inverted. So what was normally forbidden was permitted, and vice versa. So they would deliberately make a point of doing things the opposite. So on Jewish days where it was ordained, it was said to fast, they would feast. And Jacob Frank in particular, he had a whole way of just pushing things to the limit. So he would basically do everything. His philosophy was holiness through sin. So he would do the worst, most depraved acts he could possibly think of, because somehow he felt like that was hastening the messianic times, or it was going to bring redemption to all of humanity, or some nonsense like that. But he was a psychopath. He raped his own daughter, and he actually pimped out his own daughter to try to attract more men into the cult. So that's the kind of stuff he was into. And they were into Satanism, blood sacrifice, killing animals, all sorts of stuff. And so he lived in Poland, but eventually, towards the end of his life, he moved to Frankfurt, and that's when he hooked up with Rothschild. So that's the Frankish legacy.
Very dark. And these are all Jews, right? But they're not Orthodox or practicing Jews.
Yes,
They're
this
something different, so it's confusing. But
is a really important point to make.
there's
Yeah, I'm
there's a
glad you
different
brought that
strain
up.
in Judaism. Like they're ethnically Jews, but they are not even close to being adherents to like the Tanakh or the Torah or whatever. They're just
Exactly.
something.
I'm glad you brought that up because that's one of the things also when people dive into the studying the conspiracy, they're like, well, why is the Jewish connection turning up so much? Oh, I don't want to be called an anti-Semite. Oh, what is this? Well, it turns out that this cult hijacked Judaism, and they became known as the Sabbatean Frankists, or just the Frankists. And they what they were doing had absolutely nothing, as you said, to do with traditional Judaism, with the Torah, with basic morality. And so there were a lot of Jews that were absolutely horrified and said, don't do this in our name. But they became the crypto Jews, and then they've been using the cover of Judaism all this time to get away with their horrendous crimes. And then it's very cunning, because whenever anyone turns their attention on them and tries to expose them, then they cry anti-Semitism. And that's just a whole misdirection, because the people that were part of this cult are actually from Khazaria, the kingdom of Khazaria, which existed around 8th or 9th century to around the 13th century, where modern day Ukraine is. So they're Eastern Europeans. They're not from the Middle East originally. So they've hijacked the word Semitism anyway, because Semite used to refer to the group of languages and peoples that lived actually in the Middle East, not in Khazaria, not in Ukraine. So they've hijacked that term, anti-Semitic. They've hijacked Judaism, and now they're trying to use ordinary, well-meaning Jews as a shield to hide their nefarious activities. That's a super important point to understand.
Right. So these super elite people, these Rothschilds, they're like not practicing Jews. They're called externally Jews. So people need to kind of sift through and parse who these people really are. They're hiding in there. There's a lot of things that happen in Christianity that aren't Christian, but people say they're Christian. There's cultists, or Mary Baker Eddy, or some of these other people, or Joseph Smith. Another interesting character. A lot of weird stuff going on there. So people need to kind of like, is this a really authentic practitioner of anybody's religion? Because these guys are not. The Frank is really dark, and like you said, like transgression is their point to bring in the Messiah, which isn't really like a Jesus type Messiah. It's like a conquering, mass murdering Messiah, which is a whole nother story. But yeah, some of these stories are really incredible. I mean, they're unbelievable stories of people that have experienced in your book, like people who've experienced stuff. I mean, you have Bonacci, who was just, he was like another character, kind of like Annika Lewis or some of these other that saw unbelievable stuff, right? The Franklin cover up. People wouldn't believe that whole story.
Yeah, and this links to sex trafficking rings. We have the Franklin cover up way back from the 1980s. I mean, people new to this stuff look at Epstein, maybe Diddy, and it's like, yeah, that's part of it. Well, there's all these different rings that spawn off from this network, but behind it is the network, because you can if you research into Diddy, you see actually he has a lot of links to some of these Zionists, these crypto Jews that are owning big music corporations that are also linked to Epstein. Epstein himself was a Mossad agent. His girlfriend, or Madame Ghislaine Maxwell, was the daughter of Robert Maxwell, who was a confirmed Mossad spy. So it's not that far to go from the Rothschilds who created Israel and the Mossad. Then we get to just people a little further out on the in the circles and the rings from them. But it all leads back to this cult, this network.
Ghislaine Maxwell, according to Virginia Giuffre, she had like dark magic cloaks in her closet and stuff. So and there's a picture of her with Rothschild actually. Isn't that one picture with him and like he's in front of some dark thing or there's something like that. She's connected to the Rothschilds too. It's
I'm
very,
sure
very
she is.
crazy.
I mean, I don't know if I've seen that one. I might have, but I mean,
Have to
I've
see if
seen
I
I've
find
seen
that.
a lot of pictures of her and Epstein with the Queen Elizabeth. They've been pictured with Elon Musk. They've been pictured with the Clintons. I mean, you don't really have to dig that far to realize all these people know each other. They're all hanging out at parties. Just the public parties we can see on the outside. Who knows what they're doing at these dark after parties and these
Right.
black magic rituals? But yeah,
Yeah,
it's all
Diddy is
connected.
the modern iteration of all this stuff. Like that's it. You go to his party, and then there's a secret room, and it gets more secret and more dark, and like crazy. Like, and it's all blackmail, and
Yep.
people have been blacked out, and strange deaths, like kind of things. Like that's the other thing. Like you mentioned earlier, like some of these people survive. Not everybody survives. Like there's people that they do away with, or like meet unfortunate ends. And I think that that's kind of like the warning that's reflected in Eyes Wide Shut to what's Tom Cruise's character? I can't remember his name, but like they warn him to kind of go away. He kind of does at the
Yeah.
end.
Yeah, I mean, this group is it's a psychopathic mindset that runs this group and runs the people that lead it, and so they don't think anything of bribing, blackmailing, killing, sacrificing, torturing, raping. All of this is not only completely fine with them, but they make a point of doing it and getting off on it because they're sadistic. It's like they're taking pleasure in other people's pain, and so yeah, they kill a lot of people that try to expose them. They certainly use bribery and blackmail, the carrot and stick approach with politicians worldwide, and this is why you see Congress in the U.S. and parliaments in other countries make all these decisions that seem to be completely against the public will and completely against freedom and democracy. It's because a lot of these politicians are compromised, and they know that if they dare vote against something, then the next day on the front page of the newspaper, there's going to be some picture of them, having sex with a minor or whatever else they've been caught doing.
There was a guy in D.C. I forgot his name. He was not compromised, but he said they're always trying to get new people to go to these parties at night. And he said that 80% of DC is compromised, which at first glance is a stunning number. But then when you see these guys operate, Greg Spence is associated with Franklin and Bush and all these other things, and they're cycling through people, and Hunter S. Thompson, then you're just like, this is how it's always worked. So before Epstein, there were people before Epstein, Roy Cohn and Spence, and then the madam who ended up hung. Like these are really dark, real things. If you one of the interesting stories that's left out of the Dutroux affair that all these guys is that when Dutroux got busted, 25 people died. Like they were either, and it was kind of like almost like crazy. Like somebody got buried, somebody got run over by a truck, somebody had an early death, like somebody had a stroke, somebody had a heart attack. But it was like within this short time frame that surrounded the Dutroux affair, there were so many deaths. It's like a cleanup job. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what happens. I mean, look at the Clinton body count too. With these people, there's just a lot of deaths that surround them. Like I said, they're willing to kill. I mean, they kill presidents. They're certainly going to kill ordinary people.
They sure do. I mean, it is remarkable. That's the kind of like secret power behind the throne that a lot of people don't know is that there's always some kind of weird black magic, blackmail thing. It's endemic, really. I don't know if it's if it's really ever been different. Like, I think that's what Epstein was doing, was just total blackmail and giving out all that blackmail to every intelligence agency who wanted it. Like, it's off the charts. And then the island is occultic, like statuaries and temples and all kinds of weird stuff. Like, God knows what
Yeah,
goes on.
I mean, there's many aspects to it. Yeah, just so there's the whole getting minors in and blackmailing politicians, getting them on tape doing this stuff for sure, blackmail. But Epstein is very interesting because if you look at what some of the witnesses have said who've been to his not only his island but his ranch in Zorro Ranch in New Mexico, they say that he was into transhumanism. And one of them, I'm thinking about the South African survivor Jessica Bryant. She talks about how she woke up on a table and suddenly Epstein, like it was almost like a lab, and she almost had the feeling that someone was trying to take her eggs. And
Wow.
Epstein had talked about wanting to seed 900 kids with all these different women. And so there's a whole transhuman aspect to this and a eugenics aspect to this as well. So a lot of these things are connected. So the blackmail is definitely part of it, but it gets into pretty quickly all the other aspects of the conspiracy that we're dealing with: transhumanism, eugenics, and then black magic.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. Like, there's, it's just, and these stories. So these people are independent, seeing these different stories, like, and experiencing these things differently. It's really something else. What's that other one that happened in? I'm trying to remember, that happened in Europe. Her name was what's the European Fry? Chantal
Well,
Fry. Can you talk about her?
Chantal Fry, yeah, Chantal
Yeah,
Fry is
okay,
a very
I
good.
was
Yeah,
trying
so
to
Annika Lucas was from Europe, of course. Chantal Fry. So Chantal Fry is not her real name, but she grew up somewhere around the Swiss, French, German area, and she went to a lot of rituals in Europe. But she also saw American celebrities sometimes at these rituals. She mentions Tom Cruise, for example, but she also mentions French actors as well as like the European nobility, royalty that were part of it. And she had to witness horrific things, like literally people being sacrificed in front of her. And a lot of these survivors are bred to be not only just participants in this black magic and these black magic rituals, but they actually are bred to be part of the network. So a lot of them are brainwashed and tortured using the kind of mind control techniques that the CIA was working on and with MK Ultra in the 50s and 60s and 70s. So these Satanists use these techniques to basically totally um, hypnotize and control someone. And the way they do that is that they create alters. And an alter is like, it stands for alternative personality. And so they're able to create these split personalities through the use of trauma and abuse. And then one personality will kind of come online, so to speak, or come forward, while the main personality takes a back seat. And the personalities are sealed off from each other with some kind of amnesiac barrier, so they don't even know what they're doing. And when you have a master that's doing this, they can create literally hundreds of sub personalities within one person. And then they know how to trigger those personalities. So they can use certain key phrases or words, or even triggers like a smell or a color or a sound to bring forward that trigger. And then that person is basically just like a hypnotized slave. They do something in that altered personality, and then the handler, it's called, will push that personality to the rear and bring back their front one, and then the person won't even know what happened. So this is a way that they've created mind-controlled assassins and mind-controlled sex slaves. A lot of these women that survived talk about how they were presidential sex slaves, like Kathy O'Brien, for example. But Chantal Fry was mind-controlled in this way. She was reared to take some part, leading like a witch, like to be some leader of the ritual, and that's actually reasonably common. There are other women who've had the same thing, that they were brought up to be part of this network to lead the rituals, and they somehow managed to break down all this programming of all these alters and split personalities and realize that they were being controlled and enslaved and escape alive.
It's incredible. It's incredible how many of these people have been subjected to these mind control techniques that they developed. That which go back, they just got more and more sophisticated, and it's really real. These altars and things like that, and I think it permeated a lot of cults, and it never really came to the surface because in my personal life, I've ran into somebody from the Children of God, which is like known as a kind of pedophile Christian cult, supposedly Christian. I ran into this person. She was flipping personality. I didn't know any of the terminology. I didn't know any of the words. I didn't know the background. Didn't know any of the. I didn't know what the word MK Ultra was, but I knew something was going on, very profound with her brain. And now that I'm 56 and done reading and talk to people like you and others, I'm like, they traumatically abused her. It's trauma based mind control. She went into it, and she was probably programmed to be, abused, and it's really dark. But it's amazing that that happened to me in California, in San Francisco Bay Area. It's always stuck with me how strange that was. So these are real things. Like these people are really. There's probably thousands and thousands of people like that out there. That I mean, only some people come forward and put their memories down on paper. I actually ran into another one, and one of my former guests. I re-interviewed her. Munisteri is her name, and then she's like telling her experiences going through these mind control things. Out of all places, Georgetown, and she was taken and hypnotized and done all this stuff. Like she just at this point, it's like I'm old. I'm going to tell my story. I don't care if anybody believes it or not. But this is another thing. This is like an elite university in Washington D.C. And if you read about my MK Ultra, it's like the Manhattan Project. It was all spread out all through universities all over the country. So like she just was one node, one tendril on this huge network is like another way to put it. I mean, it's incredible. Like these are really incredible times that this is actually being exposed and stuff.
Yeah, you're right. There are probably tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people that have been part of this network that either some of them probably are still part of it and can't escape. Some of them maybe haven't woken up because they're kind of brainwashed and they haven't been able to break their programming. And it's a lot of them come from these military families or the intelligence families. Sometimes Satanism is intergenerational. That's another common theme, common thread throughout all these testimonies. The grandfather of the family will sometimes start abusing the grandchildren and bring them into this cult. Um, but yeah, I mean, we're just scratching the surface. There are probably many more survivors that are going to come forward and are going to corroborate what we already know, and hopefully even expose more of what we need to know about this network.
Yeah, no, it's true, and it's really dark. The intergenerational thing is for real too. That's like another dark aspect of it. That was the one when I did a show Illuminati in Germany, and it was that thing that she was brought up in it, and that's that whole thing that this weird undercurrent is around. It's really something else. But I'm glad you exposed it. Where can people find your book, Makia?
Well, you can just go to my website, thefreedomarticles.com, and there are banners there to click on if you want to simply, that's the quickest, simplest way to get it. But here's a copy of it here. It's the International Satanic Network Exposed. It's available in print, ebook, or audiobook, all on Amazon.com. I have 4 books in total. My other book, this is my third one that I wrote, Break Your Chains. This is a really thick one. The International Satanic Network is pretty short compared to this. This is also available on my website. So, just check out thefreedomarticles.com. That's the simplest way.
The full, all one word, thefreedomarticles.com.
Thefreedomarticles.com with the word "the" at the start,
And
no
then it's
spaces.
4 books, and this is one of them. This one was published just at the end of 2023, right?
That's right.
And then you're on. And it's that website is the best place for people to contact you if they want to follow up.
Yeah, you can also contact me through there as well. Yeah.
All right, cool. It's Makia Freeman. Last name is spelled Freeman. And the book we talked about today is International Satanic Network Exposed. Survivors Reveal Names of Presidents, Prime Ministers, and Royals. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
Let me see if we can finish this. Let's hope it recorded 33 minutes and recording.